So over the next 2 nights, we have to reach a conclusion as to what we want to recommend to the Board of Selectmen as to a level of an override that they should seek. That has to be done on Monday. So we do have to finish this week. We are posted for tonight and tomorrow night to do that. But before we do that, the first item on the agenda is always the town manager update. And Peter, I know you've had a couple of hire situations. I don't know what else is going on.
Yeah, we've hired we've closed with the treasurer collector and the assistant town manager for the candidates that we wanted, and they accepted the offers.
Excellent.
One of the salaries is going to be set below what we had budgeted, and the other is going to be set above what we had budgeted. So it's essentially a wash. Abby hasn't worked out the benefits yet. I don't know what kind of plans they'll each take, and whether those are going to be comparable or more or less as the previous positions held. So, but that's done. I also met with the superintendent this afternoon.
So before you change subjects, when are those folks actually going to be in the seats?
Roughly 3 weeks from now for both of them.
Excellent. So that moved pretty quickly.
Not really, but as quickly as we could. Yeah,
well, I know it's
right.
The candidate pool I thought was very scarce for those kind of skill sets. So I'm glad you found
it was, and we needed one, and we had one for each. That was that's all. At the end of the day, that's what I said. All I need is one, and we got our one. So
excellent.
Is the treasurer collector certified as either?
The incoming treasurer collector is currently serving as the treasurer collector in Princeton, and she is certified as a treasurer, and she's close to being certified as a collector as well.
Very, very good. Nice.
And she's MCPPO certified, and she's, I think, the first vice president of the Central Mass Treasurers Association, something like that.
Super. Thank you.
You were starting to talk about your conversation with the superintendent.
I did have conversation with the superintendent, and the $850,000 that we're hoping to get as a reduction in our assessment is on hold until they go through a process that they have to go through with the PEC, with the unions. I guess I wasn't privy to the very early part of the meeting, but essentially we're on hold until about April 13th. They have to go through this process. He's not sure if they need a full vote of the employees or a board vote or something along those lines. I don't think anyone is, and so they're working through that right now. And once that's done, then the school committee has to vote on it, and the earliest that they'll be voting on it is April 13th.
So the PEC is a group that coordinates, as I understand it, coordinates all the different unions up there, but now I think I'm hearing that some of the individual unions need to approve it first, rather than just the PEC, which has already kind of indicated they would, or?
Yeah, I'm not sure, and I'm not sure that anyone's sure at this point. That was my takeaway. But they're going to try to work through it and figure it out and get it done, and the earliest they can get it to us will be April 13th.
And there's no guarantee of that it will come, and there's no guarantee of the amount of it when it comes, because different factors could change the computations and also what they choose to share with the towns.
Correct.
If I understand right. Okay. Anything else?
That's the big news.
Okay. So with that said, Donna has been doing a lot of work on gathering our thoughts and our status on the votes we've taken and the ideas that we've considered. So thank you very much for all your effort on that front. It's been extremely helpful. She was so organized that I went and threw a monkey wrench into the process very late this afternoon, about 4:15. I called her up and said, well, how about if we do this? So she scrambled for the next couple of hours and came up with something very related to what she sent out on Monday to everybody, but with a little bit more detail. So I'm going to turn it over to Donna to explain what she's done there.
Sure. So just as we start this process again, same comments that we've made in our other, I call them kind of working group meetings. These are pretty challenging financial times, and we're looking for every penny. budgeting, particularly when it's this tight, is a very iterative process. So we've been going through many extra sessions this year because of the financial challenge that we have before us. So tonight is another iteration. We want to get through as much as we possibly can because this is our last week. We've got a meeting tonight and we've got a meeting tomorrow. And we need to be ready to focus on giving the number for an override recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. We don't have to have every penny balanced in the budget tonight or tomorrow night. The focus has got to be on the override. I did, as Paul mentioned, I did send out a file. I sent, Al, I know you're probably looking at yours online. I did send an updated version. What Paul and I talked about this afternoon and what's changed since I sent it out, in case you looked at it before, and you've got a color printed copy because I printed them at home. What changed is we added columns because we had a conversation about numbers that hit the tax rate versus numbers that hit stabilization versus numbers that hit free cash. And so we have 4 columns now. One is items that hit the tax rate. The next one is items that are coming out of stabilization, items that are changing that come out of in or out of free cash, and then we also added an override column, which we'll use when we get to the bottom of the spreadsheet. I also reorganized some of the rows. Paul made me realize that it was a little confusing the way it was organized. So I think we're going to start at the top and go down with our votes, and I put items that I think we want to vote on together in the spreadsheet together. That's what some of my color coding is. So as you can see, if I start at the top of the tally tab, we already voted last week on these first 3 items, the Petro, the legal, and the turf maintenance contract moving to the Novak Field account. The next couple of items, I think, are what I call no-brainers. They were offered up by the department heads and their savings. So I put those in the spreadsheet at the top because I think that they're going to be easy. From a process perspective, I'll make a motion, somebody seconds it. We have discussion if we need to, although we want to be careful tonight not to rehash all the discussions that we've had on these items before because we've got to be efficient. So if you've got something that you want to comment on, try to keep it succinct just as a reminder to the discussions that we've had in the past. And then after discussion is done, then we can vote. So for first 2 items that we want to look at are from the growth management, otherwise known as the planning department. And we had made a recommendation to reduce their clerical meetings, and the director came back and said, we're probably going to have more meetings this year because of the Sunnyside property. And he sent us a memo on that. And then the other one was, he said, we can't reduce the conservation agent down because we've actually hired somebody, but we did hire somebody at a lower salary or a lower amount than what we had budgeted for. So he made the recommendation that we could take $8,000 out of his budget. So I am going to make a motion to reduce the growth management budget by $8,000. Any discussion?
Given that the department head himself has recommended or has advised that this is doable, I think we should do it.
Paul, you want to do the vote call?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I didn't know how far you were going to take.
No, it's okay. You do the vote call.
Okay, so motion is made to take $8,000 out of the planning department. There was no discussion, so all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So that passes.
Okay, moving on. The next group of 4 we'll take together. It's all related to the DPW. And just as a note, there is a total of $114,292 savings out of these 4 items. The first item is to, I should have put it the other way around, but the first item is to add $55,685 to the highway vehicle budget, which, by the way, is offset by the reduction of this next line down here, removing $169,977 from the building and grounds vehicle and equipment budget. So those two, that's where the savings is. This next item is, he agreed that we could reduce $20,000 out of that NPDES NPDES permitting process, but that he needed to add $20,000 for the hazardous tree removal because we had brought that down to 0, and he said, if I have a tree that falls in the road in a snowstorm, I need to be able to get rid of it. So again, I will make a motion to reduce the DPW budget by the sum of these 4 items, $114,292.
Second.
I would just note that we did not remove the hazardous trees from the budget. That came to us from the manager, having been removed. Nonetheless, the DPW director made a case for adding it back, and he found a funding source for it, so that makes sense to me. Any further discussion of the motion to reduce these various DPW departments by aggregate of $114,292? Seeing none, call for a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Donna?
Okay. Next section we can skip because we already voted on the revenue increase proposals. So now we're into proposed ads without the override. The next 2 items are related to the Finance Committee. Sometimes we referred to it as the reserve fund, which is used for unforeseen emergency type situations. A crazy snow winter, and we go, wacky way over with the snow budget, or a boiler in town hall goes and nobody ever expected it to, and it's got to be fixed right away because it's the middle of winter, that kind of stuff. Right now in the budget overview, the way it was originally presented, that was brought down to 0. Our normal amount is $150,000 that we carry there, and we don't always spend it. It is literally there for unforeseen emergencies, which we don't plan to have. So there are many years when it's not used. There are other years when we have to dip into it. So I'm going to vote on these individually because in our discussions we had the idea to bring the $150,000 back, and then we had a second idea that maybe that's not quite enough, and maybe because of some of the other tight budgets and cuts that we've made, maybe we need a little bit more than that. So I'm going to ask that we vote on those separately. So I will make a motion that we add $150,000 to the Finance Committee Reserve Fund to be taken from the stabilization or savings account. And there may be some accounting that has to be done if we don't use it to put it back in and then put it back into stabilization, or maybe we don't even ever withdraw if we don't need it. But the idea is that we need $150,000 funded by stabilization.
Second.
Commentary, Jane?
We've made these comments before, but for the public and for our guests in the room, I think it should be said that we are doing this rather than having to hold a special town meeting should such an emergency occur.
Correct. And this does not directly increase taxes. We're taking it out of savings because if we had an emergency in the middle of the year, that's where we would take it at that time. We're just taking it out ahead of time so we can move quicker in case of an emergency. Hopefully, many years we don't use this at all, and hopefully this will be one of those years. Further discussion of this $150,000 motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes.
Okay, I make a motion to transfer an additional $50,000 from stabilization, if needed, to the Finance Committee Reserve Fund to be used in unforeseen emergencies during the year.
So we've got a $50,000 motion to add an additional $50,000 here. I will speak to that and say that I'm against this one. The thought here, I think, originated with we were going to make some cuts to various departments, and if they had extraordinary expenses that warranted it, we would use this additional money. I believe we're not going to cut any money from any department that we don't think can withstand that cut. So I don't think we need a backstop fund, and I'm not sure the reserve fund is the correct source for a backstop anyway, and we have the $150,000 if it's truly an emergency. So I am not in favor of the second $50,000 item. Other discussion on this item? Seeing none, a call for a vote. All in favor of approving the additional $50,000 for the reserve fund, say aye. All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
That's defeated.
Okay, so we just saved ourselves $50,000, so I'm going to delete that out of there. Okay, additional proposed budget reduction ideas. I put all of the big items at the top, all of the really small items I grouped together down at the bottom into one. I'll do that probably as one motion. But the first one is, this is in the select board budget. There is an events line. It normally is $15,000. We actually added $5,000 to it to make it $20,000 because of the senior center turning 25 years, and we thought there was going to be a celebration for that. And then there was also possible discussion of a Little League championship celebration in that. After we did that, so right now in the budget, it's at $20,000. After we did that, there were two ideas, and they're both on the same line. One was to cut $10,000 off of that and leave it at $10,000, recognizing that we are in dire straits in terms of money this year, and can we really be funding these events in town if we don't have enough money to pay our employees. The second idea, and I probably should have put this on a separate line, would be to cut it down to zero and put it all in the override. And the town can decide if they want to pass the override and include things like town events. So first I will make a motion to cut $10,000 from the select board's events line, leaving $10,000 left in that account.
So are you going to do a second motion?
I'll do a second one, yeah.
Okay, I'll second that.
Well, the second motion would be an amendment to this one to either increase or decrease the amount, I believe.
Okay, we could do it that way too. Yep.
So, discussion of this item. So I don't think anyone doubts that this, the events are one of the things that make Holden a nice community to live in. And personally, I think, it's money well spent in most years. However, this isn't most years. And we're talking about cutting some vital services out of the budget. Public safety, DPW, our culture and human services are being decimated. I just can't justify putting any money in this. So I would suggest we remove the full $20,000 from that budget line, put it on the list of things to be added back. If we pass an override, let's get it back. Let's do those events. But if we don't have an override, I can't see spending money on a parade or any kind of party.
Is that a motion to amend?
It is not, but I would like to see one.
So we're in discussion phase, so.
We're in discussion
I
phase,
could
so-
support, I support that. As much as I hate to see the money for the events go away, I can't fire somebody instead of holding one of the events. And I would hope that maybe there could be some fun, if people are really behind it, then maybe there could be some fundraising if it doesn't pass in the override. I would put it in the override.
Agreed.
Other discussion? Somebody want to make an amendment, or are we going to vote on the original?
What's the best way
Sorry?
I'll amend it to make it 0 and add it as an override item.
Second.
So the amended motion is to reduce the select board budget by $20,000, thereby completely eliminating the event budget, with the intention of adding it to the things that we're going to add, that we are going to add back with a successful override. That's been made and seconded. Are there other discussions now? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes.
Okay.
Now you have to vote on the original, right?
Yes,
Oh,
On the overall.
thank you for the reminder. So now we've amended the original motion to be $20,000. There was no discussion. Is there any discussion of that? So all in favor of voting?
what are
the
we
20
voting on now?
The $20,000 reduction.
Oh, okay.
We voted to amend the original amount. Now we
Got
have
it.
to vote on the
Thank you.
amended amount. So all in favor of reducing the budget by $20,000, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? For people who may just be tuning in for the first time, these are going pretty fast, but we've already discussed these at some length in previous meetings. So it's not that we're taking it frivolously or lightly. We're just reminding ourselves of what the issues are briefly before we take our final vote. So, but these have been discussed at length, both amongst ourselves and with the department heads. Donna?
Okay, moving on. We have 2 items related to the police budget, remembering that there are already 3 positions of police officers in the override that related to the hiring freeze. So the police department is already down by 3 officers, and they're not able to hire for those until the override passes. Assume that's it and stays in there. In addition to that, in our discussions, we had 2 different ideas. One was to take $30,200 out of the police budget somewhere. It can't be taken from any of the lines that are contractual, but there are some other lines that could be reduced. And this happened to be mine, so I can explain that the overtime training and the court overtime traditionally is always under budget by $30,000. Although we can't take it from that line, there are other lines that could run over, and this one could run under, because when they're managing to a budget, they're managing to the total. So that was the first one, and the second idea was that we cut the police budget by 2%, or a total of $65,000. So I put that on 2 separate lines totaling $65,000 because I didn't want to double count that. So let's see, I'll take them in 2 pieces. So I will make a motion to reduce the police budget by $30,200 for the chief to determine what lines to take it from.
Second.
Discussion, we did get a memo from the chief of police outlining how he manages his budget and the difficulties that any additional cuts would make. I assume everybody has read that memo. We went over it the other night a little bit in a little bit more detail.
Is this an item, is this an item we're going to put in the override?
That's a good question. We can. If we cut it here, we could put it in the override. The override is, if it fits, I guess, yeah, we could.
I'd like to if it fits.
Al?
This is an item which statistically we've been able to show the police department doesn't need. In the last 10 years, for court overtime as an example, they've budgeted a total of $354,000 and they've spent a total of $66,000 in 10 years. Almost a 5-time over budgeting. So at least from my opinion is that we would take this out and not return it by way of an override. Although that said, the numbers that I calculated would be only $26,000 instead of $30,200. Not a great deal, but my intent was to address extreme over budgeting and not to be punitive about it. So I'm going to move to amend to $26,000.
Second.
Second. I'm okay with that, Al. I think I got to the 30,200 from maybe 2 lines.
Okay.
But what, 26,000 is what you're amending to?
Yeah.
So we need to vote on the amendment first.
So just as a reminder, the police chief has a budget of some, I don't know, 150 different accounts. And when he gets to the end of the year, the total of those 150 accounts has to be less than the budget. Any one particular item can be over as long as other items are under by less. As soon as he has some turnover in his department and some people leave for a couple of weeks or a month until they fill the position, he'll have dollars available to spend on these other items. If he has an entire 28-person force for 52 full weeks, then his salaries and health insurance and everything will be maxed out, and he might have some trouble with the rest of us. The chances of that happening, I think, are minimal. Additionally, we have to have court time that requires this amount of overtime for officers to attend, which, as Al has pointed out, we have not had in recent years. So between those two things, I'm comfortable removing this amount of money from the police budget at the $26,000 level that Al has amended the motion to be at. Other discussion of the $26,000 adjustment to the police budget? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. $26,000 from the police budget. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? So now we've amended the main motion. Any discussion on the main motion now? Okay, so call for a vote, and again, it's $26,000 from the police budget. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None.
Okay, the next one is, I'll make a motion to, oh, sorry.
I think we're doing the amendments wrong here. I think we need to vote on the 30,000. We voted the amendment, then go back to the original motion for 30,000.
We amended it to $26,000.
Right.
And then we have to approve that. We
We did.
approved the amendment.
But
and
I think we have to go back to the original motion.
No,
And
as
defeat it?
original as amendment.
All right.
Worth asking, Marilyn, it's okay. Okay, I make a motion to remove an additional $34,000, in the right line, yeah, $34,800 to the police budget.
Is there a second for that?
Oh, second, sorry.
Stephanie seconds it. Discussion on this one?
I'm having a really rough time with going this high in terms of the cuts. I'm not going to lie. I think, the 26 is probably enough from my perspective.
Stephanie?
I would actually vote for it, but this is the one actually, not the 26, that I would like to put back on for the override. It is painful, but every department is painful. I mean, none of us want to make giant cuts to police or public safety, but all of the departments are making giant cuts. So, but I think it's worth putting it back in the under. So I would say this is the one that I would like to see put on the override.
Other discussion of this? So are you offering an amendment to keep this amount the same, but to restore it in the case of an override passing?
Yeah, I just don't know where to put that, because it's only if we have room.
I can just
So-
add it to the override list.
Okay.
Well, that would be your amendment to the motion, is not only that the amount would stay the same, but just that we would have the intention of adding it.
We are going to have to go through the whole override list because it's currently more than what we want to be proposing. So we're
Okay.
going to have to.
So we don't
I
really.
can add it and then we can vote on it and decide whether we leave it there or not. It's
Okay.
not an automatic included in the override when we add it to the override list.
Well, the question is that as I'm hearing Stephanie's discussion, she's uncomfortable with removing this, just removing it, but she'd be more comfortable removing it if she knew it was a chance of it coming back.
But
the
only,
override passes.
but only if there's room, like, there's, if we still have to look at, there is,
Well,
if we, I don't know, yeah, I mean, I think we do need to look at the override list as a whole to say, okay, of
we
this
can always
list, what are we going to?
we can always make another motion to come back and revisit something if we're not in balance. I mean, this is an iterative process, right? We could go
Yeah.
through all of these votes and still be over budget and have to go back and look again.
Well, and that's why I just wasn't sure, Paul, if it makes sense to add it to this line right now, or if we just go back all together for the override and say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. So,
Al?
I don't disagree, but I'm uncomfortable procedurally. I think if that's the intent, Stephanie, the motion should be to remove this from the budget and to include it on the override right now, so that we don't go back and revisit it. Either that, or the vote should just be to remove it without really any discussion of what happens later.
but, yeah, but we don't really have, I mean, I know we have, I want to see the whole override list together and be able to kind of like pick and choose at that point. I think it's hard to do it right now.
Well, I agree, but I think what Al and I are saying is we'll put it on the override list, and when we look at the override list, we'll make a judgment.
Oh, and then we can make a motion to delete it or whatever. Okay, I'm fine with that. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So you're going to make,
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, I'll make an amendment that we remove the 34.8 and then add it to the override list.
Second.
and Al has seconded that. Discussion of that.
You got one, right?
I am not in favor, I'm sorry. Robert?
Rob, too.
I was just going to say, that when you look at the police budget, so much of it is contractual for salaries, labor, et cetera. When you start doing percentage cuts or just say we're going to take this, when you look at that as a percentage of what's discretionary, it ends up being a much higher percentage than you realize when you just look at the overall budget at 3.2 million. Because it's like 2.6 that's contractual for salaries and labor.
Other discussion?
The only thing I would add to that, though, is that their budget, although we can't remove it from contractual lines, they are managing to the bottom line number. So if they're under their contractual lines, they can be over on the others. I don't love the way that works, but it's because of the way the contracts are. But I agree with you, there aren't that many lines to take it from. I think it ended up being a 22% cut in his memo from the non-contractual lines.
Jane?
Well, it occurs to me that I'm not sure that I'm right about this. You'll have to hear me out and correct me if need be. All of the departments that have frozen or vacancies, of course, none of that money is being spent. But free cash is developing because those positions are not filled. Isn't that correct?
No,
No?
they're not in the budget. Right now.
Once they were frozen, they were taken out of the budget.
Are you talking about this fiscal year or the fiscal year 27 that we're budgeting?
They're
Because
in there.
yes, this fiscal year 26, those positions are open, which would be generating FY 26 free cash.
Right.
But FY 27, they're not in the budget, so they would not be generating FY 27 free cash. Does that answer? Is that what you were getting at?
Well, I think my point is just that this department and others will enter fiscal year 27 having accumulated free cash that is a factor in the fiscal '27 year budget.
Yeah, but we don't do free cash by department either. It's just the free cash overall.
And it doesn't hit until fiscal year '28, I think, because there's you get our fiscal year '26 free cash gets determined in fiscal year '27, gets certified, I think, in the fall or January, for possible use in fiscal year '28.
So the police crime labor line, page 90 on the 80 on the budget book for anyone who wants to look it up. Last year was budgeted for 1.75 million. This year, it's budgeted for 2.1 million. So that is a significant increase. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. That's because there is a line in here, a new line that Lori added, called Police New Hires, which is minus $250,000. So that reflects the 3 officers who were removed from the budget. And she did it this way so that if the override passes, then just take that line out and they're good to go. So those 3 open positions are not in the budget currently.
Now we have to vote on
My position on this is I think Peter and the chief went through and scrubbed these budgets pretty tight before they even got to us. They're already down a couple of police vehicles, and we did not increase their vehicle maintenance line, so I think they're going to incur more vehicle maintenance than perhaps they have in the past, which is not budgeted in here. So I'm uncomfortable taking additional money from the police budget just on a routine 2% basis. So I'm going to be voting against this amendment when the time comes. So,
Well, the amendment just puts it on the override, so then we're going to vote on the overall, so.
right. So I'm against the reduction in the first place, let alone putting it on the override. So other discussion of this article. Okay, so at this point, we're voting on whether to add a consideration of this onto the list of things to be added back. So
We're not voting on the dollar amount, we're only voting
well,
on...
we're voting on
the override if we
$34,000 to be
remove it.
removed from the police budget and added back on the, if the override passes, list. So, although, are we clear on that? So all those in favor of reducing the police budget with the consideration of putting it back if the override passes, say
Wait a minute,
aye.
You just said that differently than I thought.
I'm sorry. We're removing it from the police budget.
We're putting it on the
we're
override.
going to consider putting it back on the override list.
So if I
If the
don't want to
override
move it
passes.
from the police budget, I vote
I want to
no.
vote no
You want to
here.
vote no on at least the second one. The amendment
first
is
one,
just to
the-
put on
the
the
am-
override. The
The
second one
amendment
is
is
to vote,
fine.
period.
Okay, got it. All right, go ahead, sorry.
Hello, Sarah.
You're going to have to wait till the next one.
It's unfortunate because it was your motion, your idea. So anyway, the amended amount, remove $34,800 from the police budget, and with the consideration of adding it back if the override passes. All in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
And the opposed, nay?
Nay.
Nay. So I think we need a show of hands since there is a split. Ayes, please raise your hand. Donna and Stephanie. And nays would be the other 6. Thank you. Okay, so now we're back to the original motion, which was just to remove $34,800 from the police budget. Any discussion of that?
I can't support it.
All in favor of removing $34,800 from the police budget, say aye. Opposed? Nay.
Nay.
So that nays have that one, so that one was defeated.
So was there one aye?
I think there was one. So, moving on to fire and EMS. We have a similar situation here where one cut is specifically identified to a line item that we thought we have never spent in prior years, and then the second item brings the total amount proposed up to a generic 2% of the entire fire budget. different numbers, but the same concept as what we just saw with the police budget.
So motion to remove $10,000 from the overall fire budget and to be added to the override if we,
For consideration, for adding,
for consideration if it's removed here.
Second.
so this item was originally conceived of as being a particular line item on the physical fitness line that never gets spent. You look like you were poised, but then froze.
I was. I have to question, if we believe, as I think we do, because it's here, that this is an over-budgeting situation, why would we want to add an over-budgeting situation back as part of an override?
That's a good question. I should have said the motion the way I originally was.
I know, we're in uncharted territory here. We've never had this scenario.
So should we amend it to not consider it on the override?
Would Donna consider just amending her original motion?
I will amend my original to remove $10,000 from the fire budget.
Second.
Second.
Okay, so the motion is to reduce the fire budget 10,000. Discussion of that.
Just, Paul, the chief informs me that the 10,000 isn't over budgeted, just so we understand. It wasn't probably used because we didn't have the firefighters at the time hired. So it's a contractual item.
Right, we're aware of that.
If it hadn't been.
Yeah, so what we're asking is that this be removed, that $10,000 be removed from the fire budget somewhere.
Overall.
From a non-contractual item. If by chance, it would be a surprise because the actuals are always less than budgeted, but if by chance they were the same, then as long as his bottom line comes out within budget, it's fine on other items.
Further discussion of this motion? So all in favor of reducing the fire budget by $10,000, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So that passes.
Okay, then same pattern as we had with the police department. We had a proposal to reduce the fire budget by 2% in total, which would be $62,000. So I made this line 52,000 because we already took 10 off. So this motion would be to remove $52,000 from the fire budget and add it to the override list for consideration.
Second.
Discussion of that motion. Jane?
I think Rob might be looking up the answer to my question. So what percentage is it of non-contractual items?
You're barking up the right tree, but give me a second.
It's significant because we know all these departments are heavily labor.
It's all labor, yeah.
So
And remember, that, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we pass these budgets, we pass a public safety budget. We don't pass a fire budget, a police budget, a building budget, a dispatch budget. Well, maybe dispatch is different, but it's a public safety budget, so it has to come out all in total at the bottom line.
So for me, the discussion here is the same as it was on the police line. I think these budgets were scrubbed before they came to us, and I think we've already taken some out. I don't believe we should be taking just a generic round number out.
I agree.
That's my position. Other discussion of this article. Now, Robert's been tapping away.
You could just call it like 15%.
Round.
I'm sorry?
We did. We made a motion to remove $52,000 from the fire budget and to be added to the override list for consideration.
Okay? Are we clear on what we're doing? All right, so all in favor of reducing the fire budget by an additional 52,000 and put it on the list of things to consider adding back if the override is successful, say aye. And all opposed, say nay.
Nay.
No.
So that one does not pass.
Okay, the next one is a free cash item of OPEB. So I make a motion to remove the $50,000 contribution to OPEB to be funded from free cash.
Second.
Stephanie has seconded that. Discussion of this line item, of this motion, sorry?
If by chance we say yes to this item, which I am opposed to, but if we did, I would want to have it considered as part of the override.
Robert?
I'll just say, so Holden's currently rated AA+. I look at this as a guaranteed future liability, and I don't like the idea of allowing that future liability to grow and potentially hurt our credit rating. Looking at other towns in the state that have currently higher credit ratings than us, looking at bonds literally today that were in the 3s, and we just got our bonds in January in the 2s. I don't remember exactly what the numbers were. I am very opposed to doing anything that would potentially jeopardize people that are sitting at these tables in 10 years, 12 years, et cetera, for $50,000 now.
Yep, and I would also like to remind everyone that we are asking employees to contribute, and I think we should at least match what they contribute, as we've discussed at length.
On that note, I did discuss this with Peter, and he indicated that he would probably not ask the employees to contribute if we remove this from the budget. I'm capturing that correctly?
We would lift it for a year for the non-unions, and then I'd probably have a side letter for the unions to suspend it for a year.
So if the town wasn't contributing, we would not ask the employees to continue contributing even when we decided we could not. To Robert's point, that would just kind of double the impact on the fund. I should have noted earlier, Donna's making all these motions not because she believes in them or because she proposed them originally, but just because she's running the spreadsheet. These motions have previously come from other sources, so anyone who's really against any of these motions, don't hate Donna for it.
It's okay, I voted no
She's
to
the
some. Thanks.
So, all right, there's a motion on the floor to remove $50,000 from the budget, from the contribution into the OPEB fund. All in favor of removing that money, say aye.
Aye.
And that is who? Okay. And if you're against that, nay?
Nay.
Nay. And that would be the other 6 of us.
Okay, on to this group of small reductions, which I don't want to have to vote each one individually because they're, $2,000, $800, $1,400, et cetera. The total of them is $8,500. The only thing that I would ask, and this is a question for Peter before we vote, one of the ideas that we had on here was the IT budget, and we didn't put a dollar amount on that, and you were starting to look into that in a little bit more detail, and I wondered if you had any more info on that.
We got a little bit from the IT folks, the IT vendor, but I didn't get a full breakdown the way I wanted to. My feeling is some of the capital was essentially included in the IT services item. And it's capital, but it's not capital. It's like the upgrades of a phone system and everything, so it's not something maybe physical, and that's why they threw it in with the IT line item. But I will, I can still get more on it. They were supposed to be working on it and get me a full breakdown.
So I think what I'll do is I'll pull that one out in case when we're working on the, refining the details of the budget, because we didn't have a dollar amount on that.
Yeah, but that was the biggest potential line item of that group, so it would be good to know if we have any potential cutting anything, so.
But we can't vote on it tonight because we don't
No,
have a number. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, we have to know by tomorrow.
At first glance, it seems that the actual contract with the IT vendor has changed minimally, like a 3% increase or something year over year.
Well, that's reasonable.
And I think the rest of it was, like a phone upgrade kind of a thing, which we may forego as well.
Right.
So
Right. Okay. Okay. So $8,500 worth of small changes. I'll make a motion for, unless anybody is opposed, I'm going to make a motion to do this one as a group, that we remove $8,500 from the various and sundry departments of little line item numbers.
Second.
Discussion of this motion? Al?
The accounting and the treasurer collector, which are over budgets, I agree with, but I think we're being a bit petty in taking reduction to the Board of Selectmen. I'm going to move to amend this number to $5,500 by eliminating any reductions to the Board of Selectmen.
I think the Board of Selectmen was only 2,000.
This is 2,800 and attendance of meetings and 200 in car allowance.
Yeah, the description didn't meet
Oh,
the
yeah.
dollar amount. I don't know why that was. Over here, there's a dollar amount, Al.
We amend, I remember now. When we discussed this, when we were going through the reduction tab, we said, all right, well, let's just give them 2,000. But I just didn't update the comment, but we modified the amount to be 2,000 so that we would leave them something.
The question remains, it wasn't a matter of over budgeting, it was simply a matter of
Cutting.
making them feel the pain or sharing the bride.
Yeah, this
yeah.
line was clearly
I just don't agree with that. Plus, to send them to the MMA, maybe they'll learn something. Anyhow, okay, I'll move to reduce the 8,500 to 6,500 by foregoing any reduction to the Board of Selectmen.
A second to that? Is there a discussion of the amended amount of 6,500?
I had a question. Paul, you at one point, and this was like a week and a half ago, said that I thought there was an email from accounting.
There was. Lori gave us some detail,
I
yes.
don't think I ever saw that. Can you remind us what that was?
She walked through her department budget and the items that could conceivably be changed, and she's got a printer that's already under lease, and she's got training, and she's got new people who have to go get trained, and she went through each and every item on there and justified it. And other than that, there was a truly trivial amount of money that wasn't actually locked down already, which is my opening. I'm against all of these. I think considering the $5 million we really ought to be debating, I think $8,500 or $6,500 is meaningless in that context. And we've heard from some of these people that these cuts are damaging beyond their dollar amount, even if they look like they're excessive. So I'm just not in favor of getting this granular in this budget. So I'll be voting no against this. Is there other
Agree.
discussion of?
Because I was thinking about taking the 1,200. This one was my idea, the dog expense one, and when Al came in with it was always over budget. But do we have 2 dogs in the police department now?
we have a canine and a comfort dog, and neither one of them should really be taking anything budgetarily, other than some extra overtime training. No, because they're funded by donations.
Okay, all right. Oh,
But they're in the
that's helpful to
budget
know.
because we can't count on the donations coming in, so we budget something so we can feed the dog in case the donations don't come in, but then the donations come in and we don't use the budget. So it's another one of these things where we're protecting ourselves in case what normally happens doesn't happen one year.
I think it's more in case of a veterinarian bill for an injury or something like that. I think everything else, like food, is donated pretty
Right.
consistently.
Yeah.
Other discussion of Al's revision of this motion down to 6,500? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote on the amendment to reduce the amount to 6,500. All in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No? Nay?
Okay.
So the amendment fails, so now we're voting on the $8,500 original motion. Robert?
Who,
Oh, Marilyn.
who was nay?
Oh, no.
Sep-
You got one over here, too.
Donna. And
Uh,
Paul and I were nays,
I was named.
right?
I was against, yes.
Yep, so just us, okay. Thank you.
So the original motion is being voted on now. It's $8,500. Is there discussion of the revised, or going back to the original motion? Seeing none, all in favor of passing the $8,500 cut to these various departments, please raise your hand. So that gives 0 against it?
Nay.
Raise your hand. So that's unanimous to leave that alone.
Okay. We're doing good. We're through all of the reduction ideas. Just to ground us for this next section. See if I can get it all on one screen. The next section are the items that we wanted to bring back even if we didn't have an override. But before we discuss those, we have the library, the senior center, and reducing the amount that we're taking from stabilization. But before we discuss that, there are two numbers here. One shows that without adding back the library, the senior center, or stabilization, we are currently $150,000 under budget. The way the budget book is today, using $2 million from stabilization and 100% of the free cash. If we include all of those ideas, we're $1.4 million over budget. So we clearly cannot do all of them, or I'm not sure with $150,000 that we can do any of them in total.
When you say over budget, you mean we have excess levy capacity of $150,000 at this point?
We currently, at this point, given our votes up to this point in time, we have $150,000 worth of capacity
Okay.
in the budget, assuming we're using, all the savings that we are and the free cash stuff.
Stephanie?
So if we don't know about the schools yet, can we develop a number that is no change to the school, the change we think to the school? I mean, how are we going to do this if we don't know?
In my opinion, the schools are done. They've given us an assessment, and then they indicate it's going to change by $30,000 because she found a mathematical error. So we know what the schools are. Now, he's come and told us he thinks it's going to change, but until it's done, I don't think we can even consider that.
And we're not going to know until the middle of April.
I know, but that's why I was thinking if we gave the Board of Selectmen, when do the Board of Selectmen have to vote?
Monday.
Next week.
Oh,
I need to go there on Monday. That's why we're so
All right.
desperate this week.
So that's why we're assuming that the $800,000 is not coming off
is not
the
coming.
budget.
Okay.
We set the override amount, and assuming the override passes, then we have an extra $810,000 in capacity against the tax rate, which for the public, and I guess a reminder to ourselves too, we do not need to spend that. So we can pass an override and spend less. And that's what.
So as a general overview of what we're going to be doing, and I'll say this out loud and make sure we're all on the same page, including you guys correcting me. On Monday, we're going to recommend to the Board of Selectmen that they set an override for X amount of dollars, and they will set an override for what they feel is appropriate. We can continue working on the budget underlying that recommendation if we need to. In fact, we will continue to work on the budgets that don't influence the taxes, the water and sewer fund and the rest of them. On May 11th, there will be the election, and the election will include the override, and the override will either pass or fail. The town meeting has been postponed until June 8th, so we have between May 11th and June 8th to react to the override either passing or failing. If the override passes, then we can revisit these items that we're considering to add back in. If the override fails, we can reconsider what's out of the budget. We will have more time to fine-tune the budget at that point once we have some information about where we're at. So we don't have to lock down the budget tonight. We'd like to get very close so that we can estimate the override need as clearly as possible, but we don't have to set it tonight. In fact, we don't have to set it until we're sometime into, after the override, certainly. So sometime in May. So I think that's the way I see it going. I think we want to get close to a budget tonight. We want to start talking to the public about it, but we don't have to lock it down. And of course, the override is going to be a major issue as far as what we can afford and what we can't. So, Al?
But the situation we're facing, I think, only highlights the folly of having scheduled an override vote before town meeting, where we're not able to approve town meeting items contingent on an override. So now we're in a situation where we may or may not get $800,000. And if it turns out that we set an override number and the selectmen agree with us, and then we get the money from the district, we're asking for $800,000 more than we need, which is a bad way to go about an override to begin with. Is there a solution? Probably not. But just to save a lot of time when we get to the override ads, my opinion is that the bigger override we ask for, the greater the probability of it failing altogether. So if we can't restore these to the actual budget, I'll probably be voting against every other override ad except for the library and the senior center.
Just a reminder to make sure I'm thinking about this, because this is the first time we've all been through this. We are not raising taxes when we ask for an override. We are raising the capacity to raise taxes. If we did ask for $800,000 too much, in your words, we wouldn't actually tax the taxpayers for that amount of money, and we wouldn't actually raise it necessarily. Depending on the tax increase is going to be driven by the budget that we present at town meeting. And unless we present a budget that spends that money at town meeting, it won't be included in taxes this year. We'll just retain that capacity for a future period. So fully agree with your comment that the larger we ask for, the less likely it is to pass. So that is a very strong consideration in all of this.
So moving forward, given that we have $150,000 worth of capacity, we need to vote on our ideas of adding these into the budget and putting ourselves basically over budget. So I'll take them. Well, let me take the easy one first. I will make a motion to remove the idea of $1 million reducing general stabilization because it would put us $1 million over budget.
Second.
Discussion of this item. So what we're looking at, and I don't know if everyone can see this, but general stabilization is our savings fund. This budget that we're currently debating uses almost $2 million of stabilization money in order to balance, even at the low level that we already have, the missing police officers, the missing firefighters, the short hours at the senior center and the library. All that still requires us to use $2 million of our savings fund. This motion was to attempt to find that $1 million somewhere and not use savings. So is that our common understanding of what this item is?
Yes.
And given that we have $150,000 left over, we have not identified $1 million that we can afford not to use. So,
So if we vote yes, I'll be zeroing out this number. We will revisit it again on the override list.
so your motion was to remove this from the
the
list?
idea. Yeah.
Robert?
So when you zero that out, that 150 is going to become a negative 850. If you were to zero out the 1 million.
Yeah,
No,
let me
no.
look and see.
Right, because that's, we are using 150.
No, the
or-
150,042 on the right.
This number will become 150, negative
Right,
150.
just for the reserve
For
fund.
the reserve fund, for FinCom. So this, yeah, this number will come down to 407. Wait a minute, give me a
Yeah,
second.
I don't understand. Yeah.
Give me a second, I might have done this, I might have said
Right.
it backwards, because this is what I did this afternoon at 4:45.
So
This line is the budget impact if I zero out all of these numbers. This line is the budget impact if we leave all of these numbers here. Now, all of these ideas show up again down here in the override list. So we are going to consider them all again. I mean, we could just take them all as a clump and say, all right, we've only got $150,000 and we can't fund any of these unless somebody wanted to
I
amend one
believe
of
we'd
them
be
as a
better
partial.
off looking at it. You're calculating that we're 150, we have 150 additional, we have the capacity to raise another $150,000 in this budget, which we
Right.
have not utilized yet.
That's correct.
And just in general, is there any inclination on the committee to go back and revisit the entire budget and identify additional funds to cut out so that we could fund any of these items? We would have to find another $200,000 to bring back either the senior center or the Gale Free. And we've been through the budget for the last 6 weeks and we haven't found it. So I don't see this section of the workbook being of value.
Yeah, I don't either, and I would add to that if I were voting, I would have said that we need to reduce the stabilization before bringing back other things.
Al?
I'm actually confused on this.
Yeah.
The specific motion on general stabilization is to use less of it than we were originally planning to use by $1 million?
Yes, this line would say, instead of taking $2 million out of stabilization in order to fund the budget, we'd only take $1 million out. But we don't have $1 million to take out, so I want to get rid of this line.
Can you just humor me? So in C62, can you make that 0? I just want to see what it does to
Yep.
what's below.
So now what that says is in order to bring back the senior center and the library, we need $407,000.
Okay.
And we have 150.
So let me just ask a more generic question of the committee. Does anyone have any inclination to spend more time trying to include any of these items in the budget, knowing we'd have to go back and come up with another $400,000 in cuts somewhere, or additions to revenue again?
No, I think, my opinion is it's unrealistic, but I am opposed to reducing the contribution to stabilization. That's a separate issue.
You're opposed to reducing it?
Opposed to reducing the amount that we take from
I
stabilization.
would favor using
Yeah.
$2 million as
Yeah,
stabilization.
I agree. Do you want to vote on this line and just get rid of it so that we can be done with that line? I think I made a motion already, didn't I?
So if we delete.
Let's vote, yeah, let's vote on
Stabilization.
Stabilization.
So your motion was to leave stabilization as it's currently in the budget?
In the budget, right, where we're using $2 million. Correct.
Okay, discussion of that?
What is the motion again now?
I actually think I'm going to amend it, but
Yeah, because you said 1,000. A million.
I seconded it.
Yep.
so personally, and this was my idea, so I guess it's okay for me to propose it. I would like to, instead of changing this number to 0, I would like to change it to 150,000. So that instead of taking $2 million from stabilization, we would take 1.85 from stabilization.
So then we have nothing for the library and the senior center, and it's all dependent on the override,
Yes.
which is likely to not pass.
Right, so, and that's why I made it 0, because another possibility is that we apply that $150,000 to one of these, either the library and/or the senior center, or split it between the two.
So I think what Al was proposing was the opposite of that, which is to use an additional amount of stabilization in order to fund
Okay,
those two entities.
that's a
Am I
new idea.
Interpreting,
Yep, okay.
No.
Oh.
My understanding is the original budget calls for $2 million to come out of stabilization. And I'm simply saying I agree that $2 million should come out of stabilization.
Okay, so then
No
putting this to
changes.
0, you would vote yes.
but knowing that that doesn't provide enough money to keep the Gale free or
Right,
the senior.
that's a whole separate issue. I mean,
Okay,
it's-
all right. Just want to make sure we're all on the same page here. So if I could paraphrase Donna's motion, and hopefully we just adopt it by consensus, she's proposing that we don't change the usage of general stabilization in this budget. Robert?
Sorry, can you just put $1 million back in C-62?
Sure. Whoops, wait a minute, that's going to be a negative.
Okay.
So the bottom right-hand corner, there's $1.4 million in red, which means it's negative, which means we don't have $1.4 million to accomplish all the goals that we've
Yeah.
set out above that.
I know it's confusing because it's all.
With $1 million
like a
of
double
that
negative.
being the stabilization number and the other 400,000 being the net for the senior center and Gale free.
Let's just vote on the stabilization and get it off the board.
Yeah,
And then we'll talk.
agreed.
Most senior center. It's been motion seconded. Let's vote.
I see some folks still analyzing, so I don't want to move quite yet. Are we good? Okay. So the motion is to change that number to 0, which basically means we're using stabilization as it's currently presented in the budget that we received on March 11th.
Right.
So all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so
it's
that number is now 0 in your spreadsheet, and we are not.
we actually, the way I said I don't
You know
remember
how it
how I
was,
said the
just-
motion. Marilyn's got to get it right. Okay,
Move on.
move on.
Jane?
So,
One second. Jane had a question or comment.
Did we consider increasing the use of stabilization in this fiscal year?
That's our next discussion.
okay, so now we have the library and the senior center. They're similar in amounts. What I did here, just so that you're aware, is it's not just the salaries for the people. We have to take also a portion of their benefits. So if we were going to add $238,000 back to meet the MAR for the library, we would also have to add the amount that's in Peter's budget for the benefits to maintain those people.
We don't have to add that amount. They would have to take it out of their operating budget, same as we were just talking about police and fire. So we need the MAR. We need the MAR.
Okay.
The extra 50,000, they can cut out of their budget from operating, just like everybody else has to.
Okay.
Is my opinion. My
That's a-
opinion is we
that's a
only
good
have to
thought.
fund to the MAR.
Okay, and they have, I didn't look, do they have $50,000 that they could take it from somewhere?
But the benefits line is going to be elsewhere in the budget. The insurance numbers or pension numbers will be higher in somebody else's budget. So the library doesn't necessarily have to pay this, but the retirement fund will have to. So we need to have it in the budget. Because the budget is currently comprised. I don't understand the MAR number being debated here because there is no plan by the administration or by the library that we know of to operate the library just at MAR.
Well, that's my proposal, I guess.
We know typically they have a 52 hours or 54 hours a week schedule, and they know how to fund that. They've got the right staff and everything. And then there was a proposal to cut them back to 32 hours, and they have a plan for doing that, who might get laid off and how they might combine the hours and everything. But I don't know what the plan is for 238. You know, are they only open 34 hours instead of 32 hours, or are they open, do they buy a lot more books, or, you know, we haven't heard anything from anybody who really knows how to run a library on how they would run a library just at MAR. So that one makes me nervous. So I would much rather just go for funding, either fund the library to the full standard hours or cut it back to the amount that's in the budget. That middle amount, to me, sounds like a operational nightmare. You know, somebody needs to buy a new car, so you give them $16,200. You know, it doesn't get you a new car, but it doesn't, you know, what is it? How does it work? And I don't think we know. So
I think the issue is that, at least if they have the MAR, it's a much smaller nightmare than if they don't have the MAR. So they will figure out how to budget as long as they have the MAR. If they have the MAR, we're screwed for 3 years because we lose it for basically.
Understood.
Depending.
And
But
we
I think
did-
that's the idea.
So you're.
And we did determine that they can't do the, what was it called? The waiver, because
They can, but it would have to be the same cut in every
Right.
department, and we're not even close.
we're not even close. We're like, you know,
So the implication
Almost
of that, if
50% of their
I'm reading
budget as
between the
opposed
lines
to
of what you're
2.
saying, Stephanie, is we would budget 238, but they would still run the department on the schedule that's in the budget now, and they would have free cash at the end, but they would have a budget that met MAR, so therefore they would qualify. Even if they didn't spend it, they would still be open a limited number of hours. They would still have the same staffing challenges.
I don't think they'd have to be limited hours or as many limited hours. I think it would be a much more reasonable, you know, budget that they could work to. Maybe they have to cut a few, I don't know, maybe they lose, maybe a part-time person leaves and they don't replace them for a while or whatever the case may be. But I think it's really, the hard line on the library is the MAR.
and remembering that if, the clincher for me with the library is if we lose the MAR, they lose the whole interlibrary loan
The catalog.
ability, the catalog, everything. I, just to reiterate what you said, making these motions, the idea of losing anything from the library and the senior center makes me lose sleep overnight, but I can't find anything else in the budget that I would cut before it. So,
And the flip side of this is that if we do use every penny available, including additional stabilization money, we're already using 1.9 million of stabilization, which leaves us with about 2.2 million or something like that in stabilization. We can't do that again next year. We have to get an override either this year or next year in order to keep a library. And if we string them along this year and don't get an override but keep them open, next year we're out of savings and we have to get an override or they're closed. So that they're going to spend the next 51 weeks on the hook. knowing their jobs are going to disappear if we don't pass another override next year. So to a large extent, I'm saying we're going to have an override. Let's do it. We've been talking about it for 9 months. Why spend every penny we have in our savings and then ask for the money when we're scraping bottom? We have a little bit of money now. We could scrape along for a year or two with a lower, if we have to go back for multiple overrides and we eventually get something less than what we need, we could scrape along for a few years. I think the time has come. We've put this off for 4 or 5 years already using our savings, and I think the time has come to stop putting it off. We need to have an override, and I think the override needs to fund, because if we fund these without getting an override, they're running on fumes until next year when the override comes, because we won't have any money to save them next year. So my sense is we don't try to squeeze them into the budget this year. We go for the override, and the town will tell us if they value the library and the senior center. And if they don't value the library and the senior center, we're not going to have them after next year anyway. So that's my take on it. As much as I love each of these institutions, my wife worked for one for 15 years, and I work at the other now, or volunteer at the other now. So having said that, does somebody want to? So again, we're $400,000 short. We can do a couple of things here. One of which is to take additional money out of stabilization and/or free cash to fund it, and the other is to just pass over these and go on to discussing what we want to include in an override.
Yeah, we'd need like another $250,000 out of stabilization.
Well, and we might get that school money, which would offset it.
If we got school money, we would be okay for another year, and then I think we still hit a wall next year, because school money, that school reduction is not going to reoccur next year. They're going to be back to 5.5%, the superintendent said.
So let me follow that thought.
You said you think you need 250,000. I'm reading this, and we need 407,000.
Well, but you're under by, oh yeah, you're right. You're right, Paul. You're right. I said that wrong.
We got to come up with another $400,000
yeah.
out of savings.
So to follow Stephanie's thought, though, on the school money, and Peter, help make sure I'm right when I am summarizing this. So we are, right now, we're $150,000 under without this stuff. If we get the 810 from the schools and find that out in the middle of April, we can't change the override amount, but we could bring back the library and the senior center.
Right. This isn't a final thing right here.
Right.
These votes aren't final. You could have another 800,000 from the schools, which is a lot, and it changes the whole
huge.
dynamic. So
Yeah.
you sort of have to operate within this context now,
Right.
same way I had to, but you've got, pennies from heaven coming from the school district at 800 and some odd thousand. That changes the whole landscape.
Yeah.
And you can revote it any time. You can revote it again, and then if we get an override, then you revote it even another time. So
Right.
So last week I passed out the stabilization balances worksheet. We talked about it briefly, but basically it showed that for most of the last 15 years, we've been at savings equal to about 10 to 11% of our budget. This year, we're at 4%, and we're talking about perhaps reducing that.
In half.
I didn't do the math, but another $400,000 would take it down to 3.5%. So we're at a third of the savings levels we were at just 5 years ago, and for 5 years before that. So I think we're getting pretty close to very risky business with spending stabilization. And the other thing is, I think we need some information from the town. Do they value these services or not? We value them very highly. Do the voters? If the voters don't want to give us additional money to keep these open, we're not going to. We might be able to string them along for a year or two, but we're not going to be able to keep them open indefinitely, as well as staffing the police and the fire and everything else we want to do. So again, I would say, does anyone want to make a motion? I think the next motion would have to be something that balanced.
Can you?
I propose keeping these Gale Free and the Senior Center open by taking X amount of dollars from, some other source. I don't see anyone coming up with such a motion, so I think we're done with this section,
So we zero these out.
so.
And do we need to vote like we did on the stabilization one, because it was an idea that we vote?
I don't think so,
them?
unless somebody wants to move to do something.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think we need to vote on these. Okay, so now, okay, breather, right? Take a breath. Rob?
So just to be clear, so the budget that we're moving forward with here would result in the library losing its certification?
Yes.
Yes. And the senior center would
And the senior
lose.
center having no one, and they'll probably all leave because they can't afford
The
to
senior
live
center
off
would be open 20 hours a week. We can come back. This is an iterative process. If we come up with some money somewhere, or, all of a sudden somebody says, oh, I have an idea. I can see the wheels are turning, so you may. Okay, on to the proposed override. Right now, what we have in here for a proposed override, and I don't have to do that because we voted it, no, is 5.959, which is more than we want the override to be. And I'm gonna just preface this coming into the override process.
Let's just say that's your opinion.
This is my opinion.
Okay.
This is my opinion. So separate from me keeping the spreadsheet, my opinion is I would like to get the override down as small as we possibly can in order to increase its chances of passing.
So what Donna has done here is on February 4th, Peter gave us a worksheet called Fiscal Year 2027 Budget Reduction to Balanced Budget. And some of it was highlighted to indicate the things that he thought were a priority to bring back or to fit into the budget as much as possible. So Donna has taken this workbook, put it into a spreadsheet, and organized it so that only the things that are priority are listed on here. And this is the list that Peter used to generate his original discussion topic of $5.6 million. So this is, we did not come up with these numbers. These are the manager's original ideas.
And the primary reason it went from the 5.5 to the 5.9 is because of the retrofit at the rec center. That's why it's up higher now. Okay.
And we added the legal fees, and we added a couple things.
So I'm going to go through and, again, make motions, I guess. What's your thought on this, Paul?
I am almost tempted to call it a night and make sure that if Peter, is Lori around? Can we get all this information to you and Lori tonight or in the morning and run it through and get another profile that we can just rely on? Because right now we're punching numbers in spreadsheets that we created on the fly, and it kind of makes me nervous.
So you just wanted to double check your numbers, basically?
Yes, absolutely. Make sure that we know where we're at. And we have another meeting scheduled for tomorrow. We've been here most of a meeting already. I hate to race through these things and make a mistake or not consider them in the right way.
I would counter that a little bit.
Okay?
I would do as much as we can tonight and plug the numbers in tomorrow to try to get a new budget overview for tomorrow night, because I'm wondering how much discussion we're going to have on all of these numbers.
So for me, the key items on this spreadsheet are on the bottom. Stabilization and free cash.
So just so that people see how it's organized, this first section is almost $1.3 million worth of positions that are either frozen or, in the case of the library and the senior center, would be a layoff kind of situation. And then the benefits that go with those. So there's $1.3 million worth of staff.
So on here, just to, again, just to briefly, Gale Free Library would cut back to significantly less hours. Senior Center, and they lose their MARS certification. Senior Center would cut back to significantly less hours, probably lose all their staff, and maybe some of their federal funding. There's 3 DPW positions that are not being filled at this time. So those are the folks who plow and dig and clean and fix all the things around town. There's 3 police officers we are currently not hiring. We have openings on the force, and we've frozen those positions. They can't be hired. There's a firefighter who is not being replaced, and then we have a federal grant worth approximately $400 and something thousand, which would enable us to hire 2 more firefighters, and we are declining that grant. Once we decline that grant, we won't get back in line for it for quite a long time. So these are very significant items that we're putting at risk here, that are at risk just because we don't have enough funding to keep them. So, all right. So that's the labor, the staff,
Yep, the
staffing
staff.
portion of the event of it.
The next section is the capital section. So these are things that we wanted to have in the budget, but
And if
there's
people have
just not
watched,
enough money for any of them.
for folks who have watched all our meetings, we've heard discussions of all of these items in some level of depth. And we've had the various department heads, the chiefs, whatever, in front of us explaining just how important they are. $450,000 of this comes from the school district, asking for security and other improvements at the schools in town. So again, these are not, the capital list from which these were drawn is probably 3 times as long as this. Peter picked out the ones that are the most important and tried to get them into this budget. There are more that would be extremely beneficial, which didn't make that cut. And one of these is, equipment for the ambulance. You could get an ambulance and then be missing critical equipment on your way to the hospital, or they wouldn't be able to run they wouldn't be able to run the ambulance without it. I forget which it is. Either one of them is a disastrous situation if you're the person who needs savings. And the hoses are getting old, and they're recommending replacing some of them. So they work when they're needed, and so forth.
So we can look at each one of these items individually, just like we look at the staffing individually, and decide, do we want to keep them all? Do we want to try to get the number down? Okay, next item that's in here, this is a miscellaneous item. I think it was also being used for balancing.
So that one clearly, I would just take that out. I forget exactly what that was, but I think Peter had it in the other
Right.
list, just to come up with $5.6 million as a round number.
No, those were the cuts that I made initially from operating budgets. It was amounted to about 200,000. So those can be, probably. When you look at them, they're, Selectman car allowance was lowered by me, Selectman expensive meetings was lowered, community events was lowered, town manager mileage reimbursement, that's not necessary. Finance, that usually went to the assistant town manager. Finance committee reserve fund, so that it's already been restored. That's 150,000. Treasurer office supplies, it was all stuff that I think you folks took a little bit more out of. Town clerk education. I think that list can be reviewed and.
Okay, so this, I'm sorry, I misunderstood what that was, so thank you, Peter.
Yeah, me too.
There is a list in here of 20 cuts that Peter made before the budget got to us, which we've referred to several times in our discussions, but it's actually quantified on this sheet. So,
So I mean,
bulk-
that's,
the
it's
bulk of that is one-
$200,000. Can I take that out? Yes?
The bulk of that is 150,000 for the reserve fund, which we voted to
Right.
put it in on another line, so that definitely comes out.
Yeah.
But then, the rest of these are kind of the small budget items, small dollar items that we were looking at before anyway. So then,
Okay.
then the next one, the next two are the ones that I think are the critical ones. How much do we believe we need to have in general stabilization? And how much do we need free cash? And these are not accounting proof decisions, you know, this is how much savings is enough? And so these go hand in, how much we value these lines compared to how much we value the people and equipment above is the decision we have to make. And none of it is clear cut. All these things have great value to us, so the bigger we make this number here in general stabilization is, for the first time ever, we've used money out of general stabilization to balance the town budget. That is a disastrous idea in the long run, because if you're using savings to balance your living expenses, you are going to run out of savings very soon. So Peter has said that if we get an override, one of his top priorities is to eliminate that use of savings just to run our budget, which makes all the sense in the world to me. Free cash, the Finance Committee has a policy. Free cash is the money that's left over when you close the books at the end of the year, because you didn't have somebody in a particular job for 52 weeks. They're only there for 40 weeks, so you save 12 weeks of salary. That money's left over at the end of the year. That's free cash. You know, you go to buy something and you get it cheaper than you thought you were going to get it, so you save some money. That's free cash at the end of the year. We have $4.4 million in free cash available to us this year. FinCom policy is that we spend half of that to reduce the tax rate, and we keep the other 50% to help us in future years. In developing this budget this year, Peter used 100% of the free cash available in order to get this budget. As weak as this budget is we're losing people, we're losing libraries, we're losing all this stuff, it's still using all our free cash. Peter here is proposing to add back 25% of the available free cash to save for next year. Not enough to meet our goal of 50%, but it's something. And again, we're protecting ourselves for next year and the year after. So those are the two lines that I think we each need to grasp individually. How important do we think these savings accounts are versus how important is our policemen, firemen, you know, library, senior center? How much risk do we want to put the town in order to keep those services open for another 12 months or fully staffed for 12 months? And how much do we want to be conservative and have some money in reserve? So I don't know how we handle this discussion, because we've never done anything like this. Donna and Sarah?
So if are we opening it up for discussion?
Yes, please. Bail me out.
My thought is I would use the free cash first before I would use savings. So if I had my druthers right off the top, I'd take this free cash, reducing the free cash off the table and use it all. Use 100% of our free cash this year, and hopefully save some of savings, as opposed to taking less out of savings, but then having free cash.
Sarah?
I agree with Donna. Actually, I was going to say something very similar. I think that this is a couple things. I think that we have to be really careful about what percentage of the override number is just money we're going to put right back into our savings account, right? Because that's an optics challenge, it's a communications challenge. And so I think we need to be really, really thinking about where we end up, even if it is, a financial best practice. That's not going to convince a lot of people if we go out there and try to sell the override. So,
Sarah, can I just
Yeah.
clarify what you just said?
Yeah.
We're not putting money back into savings. We're taking less out of savings.
keeping it there. But
Keeping
but
it
what
there.
we're
Okay,
saying is, essentially, what people will perceive, and you're right, the language is important, but we have this money in savings, and we want to make sure we keep it there, while we're also decimating our senior center, decimating our library, cutting, positions from all of our public safety, et cetera. So I think we just need to really, at the end of the day, say, okay, if we're going for a, whatever, $5 million override, and half of it is just to keep money in the bank, that's going to be tougher for folks. I also think that cleaning up these numbers and just making them easier to communicate could be a smart idea. If it were me, what I would do is use all of our free cash, just like Donna said. I might be open to say, hey, let's keep $300,000 in case we are in desperate need of a capital item over the course of the next fiscal year. We can go to town meeting and appropriate that money for that sort of situation. But really, I'd probably go free cash to zero. I'd make general stabilization an easy number, like $2 million or $2.25 million, something where we can say, we used all of our free cash. We need to protect our rainy day fund. It's around $2 million. That's how I'm kind of thinking about these two lines.
I agree. Round numbers are much easier to explain, especially when they're all estimates anyway. Another way of thinking about this is to look at the very bottom there, the override impact to taxes on the average home. If we ask ourselves individually, how much do we think might get approved, then we have have an override number, and then you work your way back up. What do we have to cut? What can we add to get to that number? Donna, I don't like your explanation, $139/million. So basically what that means is for every $1 million of override is $139 on the average home. But that's just my proofreading, nitpicking. I mean, $800,000. I know we've been talking $750,000 for months. I haven't got any feedback from people people are just stunned at what we're putting at risk. But I haven't heard anyone say, absolutely nothing over, X number of dollars. I'm not sure most people are even aware of this at this point. So anyway, I don't know how people think about that number, but if we had a different, if we wanted to keep this to $700, do the math, you work your way up, you find out you get whatever, $4.9 million, and then you can work your way up to how much you can save and how much you can, so. Jane, were you trying to get in?
Well, just to make it easy, can you just change those numbers here? Make stabilization 2 million, take out the free cash. Take out
Put
the,
it next to it.
You mean to see what it looks like?
yeah.
Yes, I can do that. I wouldn't go, right now, we're only taking 1.9 million out of stabilization, so I can't go to a higher number, or that would be more than,
Go to 1950.
but what if I did 1.9?
What's the objective, Jane?
Just to take a look.
And then this to
Some
zero.
of us are visual learners.
Well, this is the what-if part, right?
Bear in mind, if we rely too heavily on free cash this year, we'll have less of it next year. So if we're using that as a revenue source, it'll be less of a revenue source next year and even less the year after. So that is kind of problematic as we go forward, as we'll see, we come in next year and we have so much less of that as a revenue source and we're short on other things, and people say, well, why did we vote for that override last year? And if it keeps snowballing like that, that's all I'm saying.
That's why, just going to add, if I could, it will be really important if our override recommendation is significantly different from the 5.5 that Peter's team has already modeled, that we take a look at what that 5-year model looks like.
Absolutely.
Because we don't want to get ourselves into, we're going to
Right.
create a problem if we do something like that, so.
Well, just from the what-if scenario, I changed the general stabilization to 1.9, took out the free cash number.
We're gonna leave. You're gonna lock up? You have keys to lock up? You have keys to lock up?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay, I'm
we'll
gonna
be all
leave my
set.
key- I'm gonna leave my key on the desk at the reception, okay? All right, thank you.
Sorry,
Good night.
we have an administrative task to take care of here. Somebody has to close up the senior center.
So the impact of those two
Donna?
changes puts us at a $4.5 million override, which is a $632 impact to the taxes for the average home. So, yeah, I mean, we can do those what-ifs.
Al? And then Stephanie?
Yeah, this is the point at which I want us to be mindful of the fact that over the last 4 or 5 fiscal years, when the fiscal year has been closed out, our underestimates of revenue combined with our underutilization of appropriations has been in the $3, $4, $5 million range, which tells me that we needn't worry about free cash because we're going to generate some even in this austere budget. So I'd be absolutely in favor of reducing the free cash on the override to 0 and whittling away at that $1.9 million number in stabilization as well by not refunding anywhere near as much of that with an override as is shown there, perhaps no more than $1 million. And also, I don't know if I missed it, did we assume that the things up above, the capital and everything, are approved?
No,
Okay.
No, we haven't even talked about it.
no.
So we'll stick with that. The point being that free cash shouldn't be a concern because we generate a lot of it every year. Budgets are over budgeted. We're raising more taxes than we've proven to need by $3 or $4 million consistently. So I don't think we need to worry about expending all of our free cash this year.
Do we want
Stephanie?
to vote on free cash tonight?
Donna,
Marilyn, I couldn't hear you. No, do we want to?
No. I think we want to do a lot of talking and trying to figure out what our goals are. And Al, I'm sorry, Steph, but the reason we're talking, we haven't decided on things. Everything's a moving target. How much do you want to save drives how much the override's going to be, drives how much you can say, how much you can invest in capital and people. And it's, you know, if you lower the capital and people, then you can save more, or lower the override. They all feed into one another. And for me, I think it's probably easiest to start at the bottom and say, I think that number needs to be $750 or less. How much money does that give us to work with? And then work our way up to making a value judgment between savings and policemen or library workers or whatever. That's the way I'm going to be looking at it. All right, so I've said Stephanie 4 times. I haven't let her
okay.
talk yet.
The major chatter out there, Peter, is our giant judgment from Worcester. And if any of that money can be used toward budget. And I know originally it was no, it has to go, it's an enterprise fund, has to go back to water sewer. And then you were looking into maybe some of the interest could be used in some way. Did you find out?
A, we haven't gotten it yet, but it should be wired. The first 10 million should be wired hopefully tomorrow. But B, no. And it seems as though it's mostly going to have to stay with water sewer. The attorneys are working on it. Lori's working on it. She had several conversations with DOR, and I think there's going to be a pretty important meeting by the end of the week with DOR to discuss what can be. And we're in really uncharted waters. I've said before, it's like, a judgment from a fund that was specific to paid for by one fund, so it's probably got to stay in there. But we're trying.
And people want their money back.
True, that's another issue as well. So it's not going to be. But it
Well,
wasn't.
I just to go back to Sarah's, where we have to market this, and it's really hard to say, we have this extra cash and we want to save it, blah, blah. Way worse than any of this is we have $35 million coming to the town. Why are we being charged more taxes? This is going to be, in my opinion, the overriding nightmare issue that our townsfolks, and for the 5 of you watching, thank you, are just saying, we're loaded with cash. Why are you raising my taxes? No way. So I just don't know how we get that message out there. But anyway, that's another issue. But I just want to make sure there's no dollars hiding anywhere from the judgment that we could use in any way, in any capacity for our budget.
Right.
So to Al's point, I was going to make, and I'll just throw it out there, we don't have to decide on it tonight, but I looked through the capital here, and I would have said, I would propose that we take out the $75,000 design for the geothermal, where I know we're paying more in, to heat the building and all that kind of thing, but the thing that concerns me is we spend the $75,000 next year, it signs us up to spend $800,000 to fix it. And I'm not sure that this is the right year for that. No, Peter's, we're in agreement, it looks like. He's nodding his head yes.
No, it's definitely a valid point, and it's been, it's been a nightmare system for 15 years. They can deal with a little bit of cold, a little bit of heat for a couple more years, maybe.
Thumbs up over there. I was also going to propose that we wait on the new town office feasibility study until, we got to rebuild the pool offices, we got to get people out of Starboard and move them down to the rec offices, and I see the potential of building a new building for our town administration enough years on the horizon that the $50,000 spent this year to do a study, I think, is going to sit on a shelf. So I was going to say, let's take that out. I did go over to Trout Brook yesterday. It was a beautiful day, and I went for a walk on Trout Brook, and I was kind of horrified when I saw the holes in the roof. Could that come out? Maybe. It's not maybe as dangerous as I thought it might be, but if kids start throwing balls up there and stuff is going to start coming down on them. So,
I still think Money Tech can help us build that, or we can do some
yes, ideally we
fundraising or what, I don't know.
That's true. We could maybe come up with another idea of how to get that fixed. Up in the staffing, I put each position on its own line because we could say, DPW's first, so I'll use that as an example, not to pick on them, but there's 3 positions in the DPW. We could say put 2 of them in the override, not 3. Or 1 in the override, not 3. I mean, we could do the same thing with police. We can do this, well, fire doesn't have as many. But, to Paul's point of, are we trying to get to a number that we think has a chance of passing, or a high chance of passing, we have options here in terms of our recommendation. So between now and tomorrow night, think on that.
Yep.
Because that's when we get back here tomorrow night, unless we want to stay until midnight, we've got to make some decisions on this and get to a number that, one, we think has a chance of passing, and 2, that we're comfortable with recommending.
Al?
I think as a matter of efficiency, since you've got each of these on separate lines, and you've done a wonderful job with that, I might add, that we should consider them line by line and not now try and prepackage them into these 2 and that, or not this third one, and so forth. That's what's going to cost us a lot of time. You've got them all there in as line items. Let's go through one by one and say yay or nay, and we're done with it.
Would it be helpful if we went through, because I have like DPW group together, police group together, I could put 1 DPW position, 1 police position, 1 fire position, 1 DPW position, 1 police, I mean, what would make better sense for you guys? How do you want to do that tomorrow?
Sarah?
I think going line by line for the in the subsections where we think we're going to have a concern or someone's going to want to talk about a particular line, makes sense. But like for these staffing ones, could we use the model of like I don't know, like we bundle them up. We'll say these are going to be bundled. All the staffing ones are going to be bundled. Does anybody want to pull one of these staffing lines out because they want to vote a different way on it? And if anybody does, they say, I want to pull, the senior center one out or whatever. And then we can vote on the package and make it go fast. And because we may not need to go line by line for some of these, Al. Or maybe we will, but.
And we may have to iterate until we get to a number that everybody is happy with, right? So I will probably propose tomorrow night to start on the capital lines, taking, this 75 and this 50 out, because I have a sense from the group that that's going to be a yes. That gets us to a new number, so that when we're making a decision up here in the staffing line, we know what our new number, we know what we're working with. So if you come with a particular line that you're like, I want to propose we take that one out, let's start with those, because each thing that we take out gets us to a lower number that, we know what we're working with. Because from my perspective, it's hard to make a decision on police officers when I know down below I want to take out these other things, and I'm trying to do the math in my head. I don't know, does that make sense? I'm seeing some nods, some, I don't know.
We all need to look at what we've got here and just come to a sense of what are we comfortable with proposing to the town? And once you have an idea what that is, we have to work backwards. So which of these have to go in order to get to that number? And which of these is the lowest priority for you individually? So
that's this right here.
I would point out, we very cavalierly zeroed out the free cash. And Al is absolutely right, because he's using my numbers. That last year we generated $3.3 million of excess free cash. 1.7 million of that was in the revenue side. Well, we pushed the revenue side up to $300,000 this last couple of nights. Peter and his team are already nervous about what we're going to get. So are we going to get as much free cash out of revenue next year? Maybe not. We've cut things out of the budget. Are we going to generate 1.7 million in free cash next year? In this year's budget, we used $4.5 million in free cash. Even if we generate the full 3.4 next year, we're still $1.6 million short. So I don't see how we can zero out free cash. We're guaranteeing next year we need an override, because we just will not have that much money to put back into the budget. So what that proposal means is we're going to put the full $4.5 million in free cash that we had into the budget this year, leaving us with, we built that free cash balance up over the last 10 years. We're going to spend it in 1 year, and next year we're going to start with zero, and plus or minus whatever Peter's operations generate during the course of the year. And that's all we got. So, and we've already taken savings down by 50%. We went from 4.4, we're under $2 million now. So we're playing with fire. We start taking these numbers down too low. But anyway, I do, for me, the way I'm going to look at this is look at that bottom line. Like I said, I think it needs to be 750 or less. Do the math, figure out what a 750 gives us for an override total, and then start working my way up through that list to see what has to go in order to get to that total. That's how I'm going to look at it. Everyone can do it their own way, but I think we do need to come with some goals and objectives tomorrow night. Because as Donna says, we do need to reach a conclusion tomorrow night. And there are no right or wrong answers to these. There's no black and white answers to these. It's just how do you value A versus B versus C versus M? Long-term, short-term, easy to sell to the public versus hidden value. So this is going to be a very tough set of decisions. So, Sarah.
I just wanted to comment that I like your rationale with, using that bottom line. What's the average tax impact, tax impact to the average assessed home? But that's a nice conversation to have one-on-one when you're, at the sandwich shop or whatever in town with folks. But the vast
You
majority
think
of
so?
people.
You think people love talking to you about that?
I will tell you, I had a lot of nice conversations about the MBTAC with people around town. And when you talk to people one-on-one, surprise, surprise, we're all pretty normal.
Yep. I'm sorry. you
No,
were
but
rolling.
what I was going to say is like that, a lot of people are never going to see that number because they just do not pay attention. They're never going to hear it. They're not going to know it. They're just going to see the top line number. So while it's nice to think in that way, I think that's it's good to think that way. We also need to keep our eye on that top number because I think that there's, there's a gut reaction to certain numbers, and maybe we say, we want to keep